Marriage is no joke. Once married, you must share your life with someone, despite the good, the bad, and the ugly. But what happens when your wife happens to be someone other than you thought? What if she is a witch? A cauldron-stirring, broom-riding witch? This is the predicament Darren Stevens, a typical young American boy, ended up in when he decided to marry the love of his life, Samantha, in the series Bewitched. This TV show focuses on the trials and tribulations that this oddball couple faces in their daily life. With its fun screenplay and quirky characters, this TV show has been quite memorable, and we're about to tell you all about it. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Sweetheart,
Bewitched, 1964 to 1972, a spellbinding journey through TV history. The whole concept of a witch marrying a normal human has been done before. I Married a Witch and Bell, Book, and Candle are huge inspirations for the Bewitched series. The whole concept was to showcase the trials and tribulations that Samantha as a witch faced trying to live with her husband without magic. This theme is extremely predominant in the first season of the series, where we see each episode have one or two magical acts, and each time Samantha tries to solve the problem without using magic. With a thin veil of supernatural, the season mostly tackled all the issues a young couple would face when they get married, who love showing that the new wife will never compare to her in any way, shape, or form. Two handsy bosses who think that in order to get his signature, the young couple will tolerate the disrespect he dishes out to them. A powerful theme of this series, which can be considered very progressive for that time, was that this story was never about Darren. It was always about Samantha, a powerful woman who married beneath her, and Endora, the mother who had to watch her powerful daughter settle down with someone who couldn't let her daughter soar in the sky. As the show went on, the magical theme and the powerful wife theme slowly started to go away as the producer's seat was taken by Jerry Davis, who instead of following the footsteps of his friend Danny Arnold, focused more on the marriage issues and not on the allegorical themes of the woman. The magic was no longer front and center, and there was a slight downgrade in the story quality. However, this kept going as the producer's seat was then taken by William Fraug, who was not familiar with the Bewitched series at all, and this was very clear. With Dick York leaving the TV series in the 6th season owing to his issues with substance, he was replaced by Dick Sargent, which was not taken well by fans at first. However, the show went on despite the dwindling numbers. By the time the last episode happened, the fans were upset that the finale was just a rehash of an old episode, and with such critical reviews of the TV series, the glorious saga of the Bewitched ended. The enchanting debut of Bewitched. As all love stories start, there is a typical American girl, and one day she meets a typical American boy. Their meeting at first happens on happenstance, just a coincidence. But coincidentally, they keep meeting in different places. This leads to them talking, which leads to them spending more time together, and before you know it, they are in love and getting married. Everything about them is typical. They have a typical wedding, a typical honeymoon in a typical bridal suite. However, there is a secret about the girl that the boy does not know. She is a witch. Meet Samantha, our young protagonist who falls in love with a normal muggle named Darren. She marries for love, not caring if her husband has magical powers like her or not, and until their wedding night, she is able to keep that a secret. However, no matter how much you run away from a problem, the reality check always catches up to you, and that reality check comes in the form of Endora in Samantha's life. Endora, being the dutiful mother that she is, shows up in the bedroom where Samantha is getting ready for her night with her husband. Endora does not take her seriously when Samantha insists that she is married. Endora assumes that Darren is a male witch who has put Samantha under his spell. But that misinterpretation is cleared out by Samantha quickly. Hearing that Darren is a normal human male surprises Endora, desiring a few more minutes with her daughter to try and talk some sense into her, Endora repeatedly keeps sending Darren to the main desk of the hotel every time he tries to knock on the bedroom door. And with how he reacts, it's clear that Darren is not really the brightest bulb in town. However, that just makes him more endearing, and it is clear why Samantha loves him. The chat with Endora about how humans are prejudiced against witches really makes Samantha consider it for a moment. So when Endora initially leaves her alone, and Darren is finally able to enter the bedroom suite, Samantha decides to come clean. The surprise on Darren's face makes it obvious that this is not the surprise he was hoping for on their wedding night. The prejudices that Endora mentioned a human might have against a witch is confirmed as Darren panics, and Samantha is a little taken back. But Samantha decides to take a leap of faith in love. She loves Darren, and Darren loves her. That was enough for them to get married together, and so she decides to adjust. She promises Darren that she will not use magic and be the typical housewife that Darren very much desires. However, things do not go as planned. When Sheila, Darren's ex, invites Samantha and Darren to her potluck, which even though she said was a very relaxed, sitting on the floor type of thing, turns out to be something else entirely, Samantha decides to have a little fun with it. Once she realizes that Sheila is intentionally going out of her way to make Samantha look and feel bad, and Darren, given he is always one step ahead of situational awareness, never stands up for her, Samantha uses her powers to make Sheila mess up her attire and make her make a quick exit. Sure, she gets a little bit of scolding from Darren, but it is all right in the end, as these are small things, and every typical marriage requires some sort of adjustment from both parties. However, it is definitely hard for Samantha. It is hard for a witch to simply stop using her powers. Furthermore, she wants to be an ideal housewife for Darren, but with her limited abilities without her powers, she is never able to figure things out on time. Endora does not help with her daughter's dilemma by popping in every once in a while to remind Samantha that there's a better, easier way to do things that she wants to do, and most of the time, Samantha ends up giving in to her powers and using them to get her job done. However, one thing that Samantha does not consider is the eyes of nosy neighbors. When Darren decides to buy a house with Samantha, Samantha is ecstatic, and when Endora drops by, as an elated daughter, she offers Endora to accompany her to visit the house. The two witches go to the desolate house and, based on their imagination, decorate it. They make trees grow out of a barren patch of dirt just to see which would look better. They go inside and furnish the whole house in whichever way they so desire, trying out different things. But they do not know that they have an audience. It is Mrs. Kravitz. Living across the street from the house for sale, she spends copious amounts of her day glued to the window, trying to see who will rent the house across the street, much to the chagrin of Mr. Kravitz. Seeing the powers of Endora and Samantha, Mrs. Kravitz is definitely extremely surprised and shocked. She tells her husband about it, and like usual, just as Mr. Kravitz looks out of the window, everything is back to what it used to be, painting Mrs. Kravitz as a nut job. It is a little sad seeing how Mrs. Kravitz ends up being treated like a nutcase by her husband. However, the interactions they have make it very clear that Mr. Kravitz loves her very much and simply wants her to calm down so that he can have a moment to himself. At one point, we see a hilarious scene where Darren is so excited to meet Endora that he assumes Mrs. Kravitz to be Endora and hugs her, making her feel extremely weird about the new couple that just moved across from them. But once he has the house, like most typical men do, he decides to have a house party of sorts. And who does Darren invite? He invites his boss, Larry Tate, and his client, Mr. Barker, to his place. This sounds like a nice dinner party. However, Mr. Barker has no intention of it being just that. From the moment Mr. Barker saw Samantha, he turned on his charm in the hope Samantha will pay him some attention, and they will end up getting closer than expected. Given that Mr. Barker is the client whose sign Darren needs very badly, Darren simply tells Samantha to play nice whenever Samantha tries to explain how Mr. Barker makes her feel. Darren's lack of situational awareness leads to Samantha being trapped by Mr. Barker in the garden, where he refuses to let her go. Despite her firm refusal, Mr. Barker keeps getting in her personal space and bites her. This leads to Samantha turning him into a dog. In her eyes, if he is acting like a dog, he should be a dog, which is very valid. However, as Mr. Barker is now a dog, Darren lets him out in the backyard, refusing to let the dog stay inside. When Samantha brings the dog in, Darren is not too happy about it. However, when he learns the truth about the dog, he is furious, but for the wrong reasons. As the couple is about to head to bed, they are in their pajamas, and Darren is very upset about Samantha being in her pajamas in front of the dog, Mr. Barker, as opposed to Mr. Barker trying to assault his wife. Darren rightfully gets kicked out of the bedroom for that night, but in the midst of the couple's fight, the dog runs away. Samantha tries to get the dog back, and she almost does. When she turns the dog into a man again, Mr. Barker goes back to behaving like a sleazeball. When Samantha notices the police approaching her, she turns him back into a dog, which leads to him running away again. Samantha explains that she is looking for the lost puppy that she is very attached to, as she tries to excuse the fact that she is out in the dark in the middle of the night in negligible attire. The police listen to her and assure her that they will get the dog back and make her go home. Darren needs the deal signed by Mr. Barker by the next day. Darren is definitely in a lot of trouble when he cannot produce it. As it turns out, the dinner that he had held back at his place was all to get Mr. Barker to sign the documents. But now that Mr. Barker is a dog who is lost, that will not be possible. However, right when all hope is lost, in the meeting room, there is Mr. Barker. As luck would have it, Samantha had found out where the dog had run off to, and she had gotten him back from there. Since Mr. Barker could not remember what was done to him while he was a dog, when she changed him back into a human, things had gone back to normal. Albeit, now Mr. Barker had a bow in his hair and felt pain in places he got hurt when he was a dog. So now that Darren and Larry have Mr. Barker with them, they ask him to sign the document. However, right before he signs them, Mr. Barker decides to excuse himself and go to Darren's office to get himself a drink, where he runs into Samantha. Being the sleazeball that he is, Mr. Barker instantly forgets the business that he was there for and decides to get uncomfortably close to Samantha. This time, however, the situational awareness catches on to Darren when he enters his office and sees Mr. Barker on top of his wife. Darren does not hesitate for a moment before pulling him off of her and punching him. Larry is horrified to see Darren punch Mr. Barker and threatens to fire him, which leads to Darren quitting on the spot because, in his eyes, it's the right thing to do, to protect his wife no matter what. While the couple makes up, there is a worry that they will not be able to have a happy life now that Darren does not have his job. The couple is okay with their decision though, because Darren truly feels no guilt for protecting his wife. But soon, Mr. Barker shows up at his place, telling him that the only reason he signed with Larry Tate's establishment was because of Darren, and if Darren is not a part of it, then Mr. Barker will take his business somewhere else. Even though he is a sleazeball, thanks to Mr. Barker's request, Darren is back in the game. With that, the Stevens are ready to take on the life of a married couple, albeit with some magic. Meet the main cast of Bewitched. The show was an instant hit, and everybody loved the show very much. There have been several memorable characters in the show since its debut. However, there are some characters who stand out a bit more, owing to their quirkiness and definitely because of their role in the TV series. So let's talk about them.
Something colorful and full of life.
Samantha Stevens. First, we have to mention the star of the show, the one we follow, Samantha. She is a young witch who is at least 400 years old. She's a child of Endora and Maurice, and she falls in love with Darren. Owing to that love, she decides to marry Darren, who is in no way her equal when it comes to powers. For this love, she is even willing to give up on her witchcraft abilities and just be a stay-at-home wife. However, despite her several attempts, Samantha always ends up with a little bit of magic being used to solve the issues at hand, whether it is by messing around with Sheila or whether it is turning a sleazeball into a dog. Elizabeth Montgomery embodies Samantha in such a beautiful way that it is honestly hard to think of Samantha Stevens being played by someone else. Her facial expressions and charisma are through the roof, and if there was anyone in the 1960s who could have played a cute, relatable witch, it definitely was Elizabeth Montgomery herself.
I was just telling her about the...
Darren Stevens. Darren is the man who Samantha fell in love with. Dick York plays the account executive so well that it is almost hard to distinguish him from the character. Darren is not necessarily a bad guy, but the way he behaves in some scenes, from the eyes of a modern viewer, might seem a little too misogynistic and controlling. However, Darren is a good husband. Despite everything, whenever he needs to pull through, he does, albeit doing it a little slower than expected, but doing it nonetheless. Another huge point to be noted about his character arc is that when Darren learns Samantha is a witch, his first instinct is to ban her from doing witchcraft, thinking that will be okay. But as time goes by, he slowly comes to respect Samantha's lifestyle and eventually realizes that witchcraft is not something that he can ban just like that. This character growth is lovely to watch. Several actors have taken the mantle of Darren over the years, but as we have mentioned, nobody does it as well as Dick York did.
There's one thing she doesn't need.
Mother.
Endora. The feminist icon of this series is Endora, an extremely powerful witch who happens to be Samantha's mother. She never quite approves of Darren because she had hoped that Samantha would marry a male witch. However, when Samantha chooses to stay with Darren, Endora ensures to annoy Darren in whichever way she can, whether it is by casting spells on him or by calling him different names. She is a strong lady, and the biggest reason why she is a feminist icon is that throughout the series, every time Darren is controlling and holds Samantha back, Endora is there to give her daughter the reality check she needs. Agnes Morehead is an extremely seasoned actress, and as Endora, she steals the show. Her laugh, her intimidating aura, her jokes, and her loyalty and love for her daughter and grandchildren are honestly extremely wholesome. Larry Tate. Larry Tate is the head of McMahon and Tate, where Darren works. As the immediate boss of Darren, Tate plays quite a role in his life, making him a recurring character in the show. He is a salesman to the bottom of his heart. Whenever there is a chance to get a client, Larry will take it, even if what the client demands is not okay at all. Larry's fickle-mindedness and lack of spine definitely trigger a few moments in the couple's life. Played by the phenomenal David White, at one point, you do find yourself sympathizing with the businessman. Dr. Bombay. Now, every household has a family doctor. When you are married to a witch, you should not expect any different. And so, the witch doctor of the family is Hubert Bombay, or Dr. Bombay as we know him. Always showing up in outrageous clothes whenever called, Dr. Bombay is a character to remember. He does not necessarily find humans worthy of help. However, if Endora and Samantha are asking for help, he will definitely do his best. Bernard Fox makes Dr. Bombay come alive on screen with the way he carries himself and gives the character the proper amount of seriousness and humor, so that even though he has a ridiculous laugh, Dr. Bombay is still respected by the viewers because the man is serious about whatever he does. The supernatural secrets behind its fan-favorite status. Premiering in the golden age of TV shows, Bewitched quickly rose in ranks when it came to a favorite TV show for all. If, as a viewer, you are truly able to believe that yes, Samantha and her family are witches and warlocks, the whole premise of the show starts to get easier to follow and definitely hilarious. The storyline of this TV show is simple to follow, and even if a child were to watch it, they would find the tricks enjoyable. The first season of the show does deal with more adult things, but once they brought in Tabitha in the second season, the show took a wholesome turn, making it quite the household favorite. Even today, the ability to clean an extremely messy room with just an incantation sounds like the fantasy a lot of us would like to live in. The reasons behind the cancellation of a successful show. Now, Bewitched was an extremely popular show. With more than 5 seasons, the show definitely had a large fan base. But surprisingly, the ending of this sitcom did not go as expected. There was no satisfying ending. There was the last episode of the 8th season, and then suddenly there was no 9th season. This led to a lot of fans theorizing about the reasons for this cancellation, and there are quite a few. The biggest one of all happens to be with the leading lady, Elizabeth Montgomery herself. She was married to William Asher, the producer of the show, and when her marriage with William started falling apart, so did the show. As Elizabeth was one of the most popular and attractive actresses at the time, she often got proposed to by men. One of those men who were besotted to her was Dick York, her co-star. This definitely led to some more issues, which did not help. On top of that, Dick York ended up injuring his back when he was shooting the movie Inherit the Wind. That led to chronic back pain, which eventually led to Dick abusing his medicines. This caused a lot of trouble in the shootings, especially when Dick passed out while on set. As more things unraveled, it turned out that Elizabeth had wanted to quit since season 5, but she could not because of the paycheck, and after 8 seasons of doing the same thing, it is understandable that Elizabeth felt tired and wanted to try out different things, different roles, and whatnot. With all of these reasons playing their own parts, the fan-favorite show was eventually cancelled and not renewed for a 9th season. There are many crossovers, spin-offs, and remakes. However, just because there was no season 9 of Bewitched, that does not mean the Bewitched content was done. At one point, there was an episode called Samantha in the popular show The Flintstones, where we saw Darren and Samantha Stevens come into the new neighborhood. In that episode, Elizabeth Montgomery and Dick York both lent their voices to the fan-favorite characters. We get an animated series called Tabitha and Adam and the Clown Family, which shows the young Stevens siblings go off to meet their aunt, who travels in a circus. We also get a series called Tabitha, where we follow Stevens' kids, Tabitha and Adam, even though, canonically, their age does not make sense. A few characters from the original do show up, such as Dr. Bombay and the Kravitzes. However, neither Elizabeth Montgomery nor Dick York returned. In the series Passions, airing from 1999 to 2008, there were several references to the Bewitched series, and Bernard Fox reprised his role as the titular Dr. Bombay, making the inspirations very clear. Finally, there was the 2005 movie starring Nicole Kidman and Will Ferrell. This movie was about a failing actor looking for the perfect actress who could play Samantha to his Darren as they remade Bewitched in the movie. The girl he chose, however, ended up being a witch, and shenanigans ensued. The premise and the execution of this movie were a disaster in the eyes of every Bewitched fan. Is there any future project? There is a future project in production right now as we speak, where Sony Pictures Television kids are planning on adopting the Bewitched TV series in a child-friendly way. In their words, they are mixing Hannah Montana and Harry Potter together, and we get to follow the events in the life of Tabitha, the daughter of Samantha and Darren. Honestly, that is a very interesting take on the show, and it would be something fans could look forward to in the future. Marvelous verdict. Over the course of 8 seasons, the Stevens family have ended up leaving a mark on us, partly because of how interesting the family is, but also because of the charming portrayal of the characters by the cast. Being one of the sitcoms in the golden age of sitcoms, this show definitely takes the cake in a lot of aspects, and it still has its charm until now. As fans, we are waiting for the Tabitha show that is in production and to see how good it holds up against the original, or if it has a disastrous ending like the movie series did. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone!